Welcome, General Newton. What do you make of this? Follow up on maybe the satellite images Robert showed first, and then I have a few questions about Witkoff and how these talks might go. What did you make of those pictures?
Well, good afternoon, Connell. I was actually the first B-2 stealth bomber squadron commander back in the early 90s. This is a highly capable weapon system. What this satellite image shows is 6 B-2 bombers along with 6 KC-135 tankers on the island of Diego Garcia. It's a strategic island in the Indian Ocean, and it's approximately 2,300 miles from Tehran. So it's a significant show of force of U.S. military capabilities, certainly in the region. CENTCOM reported earlier that the B-2s have actually been used or contemplated to be used also against Houthi targets. But the main capability of this weapon system is it will carry bunker busters, those 30,000-pound bombs. They carry 2 that can go after deeply buried targets. One other comment, if I may, the United States, President Trump has also moved the Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group into the region as well. They'll be there on about the 15th of April. So certainly lots of firepower, lots of capability. And frankly, this show of force leading into these Saturday direct talks, as Robert was talking about, I think really backs up the U.S. position rather strongly.
Yeah, that if things don't go well, as the president told us yesterday, will be a bad day, as he said, for Iran. So the obvious implication there is the possible, with these pictures backing it up, bombing of Iran or the threat of that. With that, that's why I wanted to bring up Witkoff a little bit. This is from Axios. So when they talked about the fact that he was going there, they wrote about the presidential envoy leading the high-stakes talks with Iran, but said there at the bottom that hawks like National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are much more supportive of military action and skeptical of the chances of a deal. What would you add to that? So you send in the guys, the president's old real estate friend, who maybe is, I don't know, maybe not as hawkish, but certainly, and you don't have the guys in your administration who are known as hawks involved yet. What do you say?
Well, frankly, I'd like to see the military tool be the last tool that would be invoked here, compelling Iran to halt its nuclear weapons program. And I think the president's correct here. Putting all cards on the table, sending Steve Witkoff, I think, is the appropriate U.S. representative to these talks. However, I think, to take your point about Secretary Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, indeed, we've got the capabilities, and Iran needs to know that we're very serious about striking these nuclear weapons development, areas. There's about 12 of those targets, by the way. I would also add on to the table of target sets. It's not just the nuclear weapons development program that could be part of a strike, but more comprehensive strike, Connell, would also include certainly the Iranian air defenses as well as their ballistic missile capabilities, because should we strike Iran, they're also going to be in a position where they'll want to retaliate. We're going to want to make sure that they've got minimal abilities and capabilities to retaliate should we strike their nuclear weapons development sites.
Okay, one last thing before I let you go, General. I did think, so Robert said this, and he's right, that the White House is saying still, as the president said yesterday, these are direct talks, and Caroline Leavitt confirmed as much in her briefing from the briefing room. I'll put a statement up, though, from the Iranian side of this. The spokesperson for their government said, in the first line here, you'll see, is we are pursuing indirect negotiations, and then goes on to say more. The content can generally be discussed after the talks, but what the Islamic Republic has in mind is we will defend the legitimate rights of the Iranian negotiations, or the Iranian nation in the negotiations. So I don't know which is which here, but what would you say, and do you support this idea of having direct talks if that's what we're having?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I do indeed support moving forward with direct talks. I think that's just Iranian rhetoric. I think I would presume that the Iranians are going to show up in Oman on Saturday, and you'll have direct talks led by Stephen Witkoff and the Iranian delegation. But nonetheless, I believe the only way that you're going to have any chance at all of an agreement moving forward is these direct talks. However, I remain very skeptical that they're going to follow through with some sort of agreement. I'm generally glass is half full, Connell, but again, bottom line is, should these talks fall through, and Iran needs to know that the United States has plenty of military capability should they go after what I would call, the last resort, and that would be a military attack against Iran, because they cannot, bottom line, they cannot have a nuclear weapon capability in the region. That would upset all U.S. national security. It would also, there would be obviously a proliferation of other nuclear weapon nation states such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and so forth. So the bottom line is, first and foremost, U.S. national security interests are that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.